Tonight, I invite you to step with me into a world that history books often hide behind footnotes, moral judgments, or whispers from another age. A world built of shadow and survival, of routine and resilience. A world where countless women lived, worked, dreamed, and endured, yet were rarely allowed to speak for themselves. Before we begin, I want you to imagine something simple. The sound of distant horse hooves on wet cobblestones, the low hum of a waking city swallowed by coal fog, and the cold, thin light of an early London morning slipping past worn curtains. Because this is where our story begins. Not in a palace, not in a manor house, but in a narrow room above a discreet door in Victorian London. Tonight, we will follow the life of Mary, not a real woman from the historical record, but a composite of thousands whose stories were left behind. She is one of the many who lived and worked in a brothel during the height of the Victorian era. Through her eyes, we will explore a world where survival was a daily negotiation, where dignity was shaped by circumstance, and where the line between condemnation and necessity was razor thin. But this is not a tale of scandal, nor is it an act of voyeurism. It is, instead, a journey into the overlooked realities of working-class women navigating an unforgiving world. Across this series of parts, you will hear about Mary's mornings, the routines that shaped her days, the hidden domesticity of the brothel, the economic forces that pushed her here, the dangers she faced, the small joys she treasured, and the complex web of relationships that supported her. You will see how Victorian society, eager to police morality, also quietly depended on the very trade it condemned. And as you listen, you may find that Mary's story is not only about the past, it is about endurance, agency, and the complicated choices women have always had to make. Now, settle in. Let the city fog roll in around you. Let the weight of that distant world settle softly on your imagination. Because we are about to step through a door most Victorians pretended not to see, and meet the women history tried to forget. Part 1. A Morning in London, 1857. The day begins before the sun rises, not with elegance or ceremony, but with the quiet ache of waking on a cold morning in London, 1857. Picture a narrow room pressed tightly between two other brick buildings on a side street near Haymarket. The wallpaper is faded and peeling at the corners, its once bright floral pattern dulled by years of damp air and coal soot drifting in from the streets below. Mary wakes slowly, the way someone does when sleep has been more refuge than rest. She lies on a lumpy horsehair mattress covered by a thin wool blanket, her breath forming pale clouds in the early chill. There is no fireplace lit yet. Coal is rationed, and mornings are never granted such luxury. Beside her, in a second narrow bed, Lily sleeps curled tightly, her red hair spilling in tangles across the pillow. Mary listens to her soft, rhythmic breathing, a rare moment of peace in a life built around constant attention to the world beyond this room. The city awakens before either of them does completely. Horses clop across uneven cobblestones. A milk cart rattles down the lane. Street vendors, already at work, shout the first calls of the day: fresh bread, hot pies, newspapers. A whistle blows somewhere in the distance, marking the start of a shift in one of the many factories churning through London's workforce. Mary pulls her shawl around her shoulders and rises. Her feet touch the cold wooden floorboards, and a small shiver crawls up her spine. She breaks the thin layer of ice on the surface of the water basin, splashes her face, and gasps softly as the shock wakes her fully. This is routine, a reminder that comfort is a privilege for other women, in other houses, living other lives. As the sting of cold water fades, Mary feels herself grounding again in her morning rhythm. She takes slow breaths, steadying her thoughts before the day begins. In this house, mornings are not chaotic. They are structured, predictable, almost domestic. a strange contrast to the nature of the work done here after sundown. She glances at Lily, who is beginning to stir, rubbing her eyes as she awakens. "What time is it?" Lily mumbles. "Early," Mary answers softly. "But we should get moving before Mrs. Winters stomps up the stairs." That earns a sleepy smile from Lily, who knows as well as Mary what the housekeeper's heavy footsteps mean. Discipline, order, and no patience for lingering in bed. Together, the two young women begin their quiet preparations. Stockings, petticoats, simple day dresses. Nothing fancy during daylight hours. Their appearance must mirror the thousands of respectable working women walking the streets of London. Brothels survive in the shadows, and discretion is worth more than the finest silk. As Mary laces her corset, not tightly, just enough to shape her figure, she reflects on the life she once imagined. A seamstress in a small shop, perhaps. Married by 21, a room of her own with lace curtains she could mend herself. Those dreams felt real once. But hunger has a way of carving new paths. 3 years ago, too weak from skipping meals, too cold from winter drafts seeping through broken windows, she accepted Jane's offer. A different kind of work, a steady bed, 2 meals a day, enough money to buy shoes that didn't leak and food that didn't spoil. Survival won. Morality stood no chance. Downstairs, the scent of coffee drifts up the staircase. Real coffee, not the bitter chicory substitute most working families drink. Another small reminder that this house, though far from luxurious, offers its workers more comfort than the world outside. As Mary finishes dressing, she pauses for a moment by the window. The sky is a pale gray, heavy with the promise of snow. Smoke rises from chimneys like thin black ribbons. London, massive and indifferent, stretches endlessly in every direction. And here, in a small room hidden from the respectable world, a new day begins. Quietly, carefully, just like every other morning in a brothel where routine is the closest thing to safety. Part 2. The house awakens. By the time Mary and Lily step into the hallway, the house has begun to stir with its own quiet rhythm. The narrow corridor is dimly lit, the carpet worn thin from years of footsteps, girls moving between rooms, housemaids carrying linens, the doctor's occasional visits, and customers being led upstairs in the discreet hours of the night. Downstairs, a familiar orchestra of morning sounds drifts upward. The clatter of pots in the kitchen, the rumble of coal being shoveled into the dining room hearth, and Mrs. Winters' unmistakable voice giving brisk instructions to Betsy, the young maid-of-all-work. Mary inhales deeply as she descends the stairs. The scent of coffee mixes with the warmth of rising bread and the earthy aroma of the morning stew being prepared for the midday meal. For a moment, the house feels like any other household in London. Bustling, ordinary, almost peaceful. But appearances, especially here, are always layered. The brothel operates on a schedule designed to avoid chaos. Mornings are for cleaning, bathing, resting, and putting the house into perfect order before the first afternoon visitors arrive. Madame Cartwright insists on discipline, believing that routine keeps both morale and reputation intact. In the kitchen, cook stands over a pot of steaming porridge. She's a broad-shouldered woman in her 50s with flushed cheeks and a serious expression, her apron dusted with flour. She has worked here longer than most of the girls, arriving after her husband's death left her with no means to support herself. "Morning, Mary." "Morning, Lily," cook says without turning. She always knows who enters by the sound of their footsteps. Betsy, the petite maid with neatly braided brown hair, sets the table with plates and mismatched cutlery. She's only 13, sheltered here until she's older. Her life before this house was harsher than anything within its walls, begging for scraps, living in alleyways, and sleeping beneath doorways. For now, she is safe. Mary takes a seat at the long wooden table. The chair is worn smooth from years of use, its surface comforting beneath her hands. Lily sits beside her, still blinking sleep from her eyes. Soon the other women drift in one by one. Emily, small and blonde with a cheerful disposition. Sarah, calm and confident, her cleverness making her something of a second accountant to Madame Cartwright. Josephine, still pale from a lingering illness, her smiles faint but sincere. Breakfast begins with the soft clink of spoons against bowls and the quiet murmur of conversation. By unspoken rule, business is not discussed this early. Morning meals are for normal topics: weather, small street dramas, and the domestic details that make these women feel like more than the roles they perform each night. "I saw the baker's boy slip again on the cobbles yesterday," Emily says with a grin. "He dropped the whole basket of loaves, nearly cried on the spot." Sarah snorts softly. "I hope Cook didn't see him. She'd have given him an earful on proper footwork." Light laughter fills the table. It is moments like this that remind Mary of something important. Though their work is hidden from polite society, their lives continue in all their human fullness. They share gossip, frustrations, hopes, and jokes over porridge, just like the washerwomen, factory girls, and governesses across the city. When the meal ends, Mary helps clear the table before beginning her assigned chores. Today, she must dust the parlor and polish the glasses in the small bar cabinet, tasks she knows well. The repetition is soothing. The familiarity keeps her grounded. As she steps into the parlor, the morning light filters weakly through the curtains, illuminating velvet-upholstered chairs and a mantel lined with porcelain figurines. The room is designed to look respectable, almost genteel, so that any unexpected visitor might mistake it for an ordinary home. With the feather duster in hand, Mary begins her work. The soft sweep of dust from the mantelpiece, the circular motion of polishing glass, it becomes a near meditation. The house creaks quietly around her, settling into its daytime calm. Outside the window, London's daily life marches on. A dog barks, children run down the street, a neighbor beats a rug in the backyard. The world remains unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the existence of the house Mary calls home. She pauses for a moment, gazing through the fogged glass at the street below. Despite society's pretensions, all of life unfolds here, side by side, the respectable and the condemned, the mundane and the forbidden, the public world and the private shadows. Mary returns to her work with steady hands. Another day has truly begun. Part 3. Memories of how she arrived here. As Mary finishes polishing the last of the crystal glasses, her mind drifts, not out of distraction, but because mornings in the parlor often invite reflection. The quiet is a kind of space where memories rise unbidden, where past and present fold neatly together. She rests her hand lightly on the back of a velvet chair. The fabric, once rich and plush, has thinned from years of use. Like the women who work here, it bears the marks of time, labor, and necessity. And here, in the stillness, the story of how she came to this place resurfaces. It was winter, bitter, relentless, the kind that sank into bones and refused to leave. 3 years ago, Mary remembers the cramped room she rented above a tailor's shop. She remembers the frost on the inside of the window pane, the candle stubs barely giving light, and the way her fingers throbbed from hours of sewing until they cracked and bled. She had been a seamstress, nimble, skilled, diligent. But her skill was not unique. London was full of women like her, all competing for the same paltry jobs. At best, she earned enough to keep a roof over her head. At worst, she went hungry, and hunger came more often than rest. For 2 days, she had eaten nothing but a crust of stale bread. She sat hunched over a delicate piece of white linen, stitching as fast as she could to finish a commission that might pay for a week's lodging. Her breath misted the air, her hands shook, the needle pricked her again and again, and then Jane came. Jane, with her warm cheeks flushed from the cold in a wool dress that actually fit her. Jane, who had once worked beside Mary in a sewing room, but now looked healthier, better fed, almost comfortable. Mary had felt a sudden stab of envy, followed immediately by shame. She didn't want to resent Jane. She wanted to understand how she had changed so much. Jane had brought food. Real food. A small meat pie still steaming when she unwrapped it. Mary tried not to devour it too quickly, but the hunger was too deep. Jane said little at first, watching quietly, waiting. When the last bite was gone, Jane finally spoke. "There's a place," she said softly. "A house off Haymarket. It isn't cruel. The madam? She's strict, but fair. 2 meals a day, medical checks every week, a bed you don't have to fight the cold to sleep in." Mary remembered staring at her, the words sinking in slowly like stones dropping into deep water. "You'd make in 1 night," Jane continued gently. "What you make in a week here?" Mary had not wanted to hear that. She wanted to believe she could keep trying, that she could make a decent living without stepping into that world. She'd been raised in a God-fearing home. Her parents were gone, her brothers scattered north and south, chasing work. There was no one left to write, no one to ask for help. Pride, she discovered, has a weight. Hunger has a different one, and hunger always wins. Mary hadn't answered Jane right away. She finished her sewing. She lit a candle and worked through the night, trying to convince herself that this life, this slow starvation, was better than the alternative. By morning, her fingers were numb, her stomach twisted in sharp, hollow waves, and the truth had settled painfully inside her. Respectability could not be eaten. Morality could not warm her. Her needle and thread could not defeat the reality of London. So she followed Jane. She stepped into a world she had been taught to fear. A door most women pretended not to notice. A house that operated outside the bounds of what society called decent. And there, she chose survival. Mary sighs softly as she places the last polished glass onto the shelf. The memory fades, replaced by the familiar calm of the parlor. She knows she made the decision millions of women across history have made in their own ways. The choice to live, even when the acceptable choices run out. Routine calls her back to the present. The mantle must be dusted, the curtains straightened, the room prepared for the day ahead. Mary smooths her apron and continues her work. Reflection time is over. There is still much to do before noon. Part 4. The doctor's visit and the realities of health. Late morning brings a shift in the house's rhythm, a subtle tightening of the atmosphere, a quiet awareness shared by every girl within these walls. It is Wednesday, and Wednesdays mean only one thing. The doctor is coming. Mary hears the front door open downstairs, followed by Mrs. Cartwright's polite, measured greeting. The madam's voice shifts noticeably when speaking to outsiders. Lower, silkier, wrapped in an air of professional respectability. "Dr. Harrison, thank you for coming." His visits are not optional. They are a rule of the house, one of Madame Cartwright's strictest and most essential. In a profession that carries silent dangers, these weekly examinations are the difference between a relatively safe life and catastrophe. Mary places her polishing cloth neatly on the bar counter and wipes her hands on her apron. She takes a breath, not one of fear, but preparation. The examination itself is clinical, brisk, and rarely painful, but it is never entirely comfortable. The sound of the doctor's footsteps approaches up the stairs. Slow, steady, confident. He has seen more than most men and reacts to none of it with cruelty or disdain. For that, the girls respect him. For his professionalism, they tolerate him. Mrs. Winters appears in the parlor doorway, her hands clasped around her ring of keys. "Josephine first," she announces. "Lily next. Mary, you'll follow after." Mary nods. This order rarely changes. Everyone knows roughly when they will be called. It keeps the house moving smoothly. As Josephine walks past, she offers Mary a tense smile. Her cough has worsened over the past week, and though she tries to hide it, it rattles faintly in her chest. Mary watches her disappear into the madam's sitting room, which has been transformed into a temporary examining chamber each Wednesday. The minutes stretch quietly. Mary dusts the final corner of the mantelpiece, listening to the house breathe around her. Betsy chops vegetables in the kitchen. Cook kneads bread in rhythmic motions. Outside, a street vendor calls out for customers to bring their dull knives to be sharpened. It is all so ordinary, and yet underneath the ordinary hum lies a truth everyone in this house understands. Illness is not just uncomfortable. It can end a career. Not in a dramatic, theatrical sense, but in a slow, grinding one. A failing cough that worsens, a rash that spreads, sores that will not heal. These things, left unchecked, can remove a girl from the house entirely. If she is lucky, Madame Cartwright intervenes, sends her to a hospital or a charity home. If not, Mary doesn't allow the thought to finish. The door opens again. Josephine exits, head bowed, face pale. Mrs. Cartwright's eyes follow her with a look Mary recognizes, concern mixed with calculation. The madame must protect the girl, but she must also maintain the house's reputation. "Rest for a week," Josephine murmurs to Mary as she passes. "Medicine 3 times a day." Mary squeezes her hand gently. It will be all right. She hopes it will be. Lily is called next. Mary sits on a velvet chair, hands folded neatly in her lap. She focuses on her breathing, letting each inhale and exhale settle her mind. She has learned to create small emotional partitions within herself, mental spaces where the clinical nature of the examination cannot penetrate. She imagines the warm kitchen, the smell of bread, the quiet murmur of the girls' breakfast conversations. These thoughts form a soft barrier, giving her just enough distance when she needs it. Soon, Lily exits, looking relieved. "He's in a good mood," she whispers playfully. Then Mary hears her name. She stands, straightens her dress, smooths her hair, and steps forward. The sitting room feels different today. Sunlight filters through the window, landing on the desk draped in a fresh white cloth. Glass bottles containing antiseptic solutions glint faintly in the light. A stethoscope rests beside a leather-bound notebook where the doctor records every detail. Dr. Harrison washes his hands in a small basin, his sleeves neatly rolled up. He's a man around 50, with streaks of gray in his beard and the tired eyes of someone who has worked too long and seen too much, but still cares enough to stay gentle. "Good morning, Mary," he says, his tone warm but professional. "Any concerns today?" "None, doctor." "Very good," he replies. "Let's proceed." Mary shifts her focus inward, letting her mind drift to neutral thoughts. The book she borrowed from Sarah, the jam tart she ate yesterday, the way the winter sun looked as it hit the rooftops. These thoughts become her shield. The examination is methodical. Breathing, pulse, eyes, throat. The doctor's movements are efficient, never lingering. Then the more intimate check, quick, careful, gloved, distant. Finally, he steps back and removes his gloves. "Well," he says with a nod, "everything appears to be in good order. Continue as usual." Mary exhales slowly. Not relief exactly, but release. The moment passes, and she reclaims herself fully again. Mrs. Cartwright writes a note in her ledger. "Send Sarah in next," she says softly. Mary leaves the room as elegantly as she entered. Back in the kitchen, the warmth wraps around her like a shawl. Lily is already pouring tea, and Cook has placed a plate of small currant buns on the table. Fresh, fragrant, comforting. Mary takes a seat. The familiar weight of the wooden chair beneath her steadies her. The steam rising from her mug calms her senses. She breaks a bun in half, the dough still warm enough to soften in her fingers. Another Wednesday examination over. Another small victory in a life where stability must be earned week by week. She sips her tea, letting the warmth settle into her chest. The day continues. Part 5. The quiet hours of afternoon. After the doctor's visit and a brief rest in the kitchen, the tempo of the day shifts again. Noon has passed, the house is warm with the smell of simmering stew, and a gentle lull settles into the walls. One of the few quiet moments that brothel life allows. Mary finishes her tea, brushes a few crumbs from her dress, and climbs the stairs to her room. The narrow wooden steps creak softly beneath her feet, familiar and comforting in their own way. Upstairs, the hallway is hushed, doors slightly ajar as the girls move through their private routines. Sunlight filters through a small window at the end of the corridor, dust motes drifting lazily in its beam. Her room feels like a small sanctuary at this hour. She enters and closes the door gently behind her. The bed is neatly made, the blankets smoothed with her morning precision. Her comb lies where she left it, next to the chipped ceramic pitcher filled with clean water. On the tiny dresser, her few belongings are arranged with careful order. A ribbon, a worn book borrowed from Sarah, a small wooden box containing her savings, a modest but treasured handful of coins. Mary unbuttons her dress and inspects it in the mirror. It is clean enough for afternoon visitors, but lacks the elegance required for evening clients. She decides to leave it on for now. The afternoon calls rarely require finery. She sits on the edge of the bed, letting her body relax into the mattress's uneven softness. For a moment, she simply breathes, slowly, evenly, grounding herself. The quiet of the room wraps around her like a shawl. Downstairs, there might be a customer or two later. Mr. Phillips, the bank clerk who talks mostly about his stamp collection, or the shy man who calls himself Smith and never stays more than 15 minutes. The afternoon clientele are creatures of habit, seeking brief distraction during lunch breaks. Never the elaborate performances required at night. Mary stands, takes her comb, and runs it through her hair, smoothing out the slight tangles from the morning. The simple act is both practical and calming. She gathers her hair into a neat knot and fixes it firmly with one of the new hairpins she bought the day before. Just as she's about to put the comb down, she hears footsteps in the hallway. A soft knock comes a moment later. "Mary?" It's Sarah's voice. Steady, composed. Mary opens the door. "Yes?" "Mrs. Cartwright wants everyone to prepare for evening earlier than usual," Sarah says. A few messages arrived. Potential clients tonight. Mary nods. This is how the brothel survives. Adaptability, readiness, and a great deal of anticipation. "I'll come down soon," she says. Sarah gives a small, approving nod and moves on to inform the others. The hallway grows livelier as the girls begin their preparations. Fabric rustling, whispers exchanged, doors opening and closing. Mary returns briefly to her chest, retrieving a simple shawl and a coin purse. There is enough time for a quick outing before the evening begins, and she knows exactly what she needs. Hairpins, writing paper, and perhaps something sweet. She wraps the shawl around her shoulders and heads downstairs. Mrs. Winters meets her in the hallway, arms crossed but not unkindly. "Back before 5, she says. "Dinner is at past, and be sure to have what you need for tonight." "Yes, Mrs. Winters?" The housekeeper nods, satisfied with the response, and moves on. Mary steps outside and locks the door behind her, a privilege granted only to the trusted few. The cold air hits her immediately, crisp and sharp, but it feels invigorating. She breathes deeply, letting the chill clear her mind. The city is alive around her. Carts rumble, children shout, vendors call out their wares. She blends easily into the moving crowd, her dark blue dress and modest shawl marking her as no different from thousands of London women running errands. These small walks are Mary's moments of freedom, short but precious. The haberdashery is warm and filled with the sound of scissors snipping and customers murmuring. The proprietor, an older woman with keen eyes, hands Mary a packet of good quality hairpins. These will last, she assures. At the stationer's shop, she buys writing paper, envelopes, and a new pencil. The elderly man behind the counter, chatty as always, asks if the paper is meant for love letters. Mary gives him a polite, unreadable smile. She treats herself to a jam tart from the bakery on the corner, its sweetness spreading across her tongue as she walks. The simple pleasure of it warms her more than the shawl. On the way back, she moves slowly, taking in the shifting colors of the late afternoon. The sky is tinting toward gold, the city softening in the pre-dusk glow. For a few minutes, she allows herself to imagine a different path, one where she works in a dress shop or a bakery, or perhaps as a governess in a quiet town near the sea. But fantasies fade as quickly as steam on winter glass. The brothel comes back into view, its discreet facade giving nothing away. Mary slips her key into the lock, steps back into the warmth of the hallway, and hangs her shawl carefully on its peg. It is time to prepare for the night. Part 6. Transformation for the evening. The house has changed by the time Mary returns. Even before she closes the door behind her, she can feel the shift, a subtle hum, a quiet urgency, the unmistakable sense of approaching night. Evening is the heart of the brothel's work. It is when the illusion must be seamless, the performance polished, the girls transformed from their daytime selves into the women customers pay to see. Not merely bodies, but fantasies, curated, practiced, and delivered with precision. Mary climbs the stairs to her room, her footsteps careful but unhurried. The hallway buzzes softly with movement. Doors half open reveal glimpses of color. Silk dresses hanging ready, petticoats laid out, hairpieces unwrapped, stockings neatly folded. Voices drift back and forth. "Lily, can you help with the buttons?" "Emily, have you seen my pearl comb?" "Sarah, does this look even?" These small rituals are a shared dance the girls have performed countless times. It is one of the few moments each day when they are united in purpose. Mary steps into her room and hangs her shawl. Lily stands by the mirror, half-dressed, wrestling with the long row of buttons running down the back of her green silk gown. Her hair, vibrant and unruly, is pinned into a half-finished style. "Mary?" she sighs with dramatic despair. "If these buttons had any more patience, they'd unfasten themselves." Mary laughs softly and crosses the room. "Turn around." Her fingers work quickly, nimble from years of sewing, fastening each small fabric-covered button with practiced ease. The silk beneath her hands is smooth, cool, and elegant, a stark contrast to the coarse wool dresses they wear during the day. When she finishes, Lily turns toward the mirror, assessing the effect. "You look beautiful," Mary says. "The green suits you." Lily's cheeks color faintly. "You always know how to make it sound true." Mary smiles. A compliment is not a lie when kindness is behind it. As Lily leaves the room to finish her preparations, Mary turns to her own gown. It hangs in the wardrobe, a deep blue silk dress with fitted sleeves and a gently flared skirt. Simple enough to be tasteful, elegant enough to be alluring. She lays out everything she needs in a neat line on the bed. Fine cotton chemise, drawers, petticoats, corset, silk dress, hairpins, powder and rouge, lavender water. Every piece has a purpose. Every layer adds to the illusion. Mary undresses slowly, letting her day clothes fall into the waiting basket at the foot of the bed. She washes herself with the cool basin water, wiping away the morning's work, the afternoon errands, the remnants of the doctor's visit. The chill sends tiny shivers across her skin, but also clears her mind. Fresh undergarments come first, the soft cotton gentler than the rough fabrics she once worked in. Then the corset, which she fastens at the front before turning it and tightening the laces. Not too much. She needs to breathe, to move, to work. Next come the petticoats, the layers adding subtle volume to her skirt. Once she slips into the blue silk dress, it settles over her frame like water, smoothing instantly into shape. She feels its weight, familiar yet transformative. Her hair is next. She takes it down from the simple knot and brushes through the dark waves until they gleam. With careful precision, she twists and pins it into an elegant arrangement, leaving soft curls to frame her face. She uses the new hairpins she bought earlier, strong and reliable. The cosmetics require a lighter touch. Too much powder or rouge would undermine the illusion of natural beauty the house cultivates. For daytime clients, a hint of color is enough. For evening clients, especially wealthier ones, the artistry must be subtle but unmistakably there. A dab of powder smooths her complexion. A touch of rouge warms her cheeks and lips, blended until it looks like the faintest natural flush. Finally, she applies the lavender water, a small drop behind each ear, another at the base of her throat. The scent rises gently as her skin warms, soft enough to be intimate, not overpowering. When she steps back from the mirror, she hardly resembles the woman who dusted the parlor this morning. She has become the evening version of herself, polished, poised, and prepared for the night's performance. The clock in the hallway chimes 5:30. Dinner. Mary smooths the skirt of her dress, lifts her chin, and steps out into the corridor. The transformation is complete, but the night has only just begun. Part 7. Dinner with the Madame. By the time Mary descends to the dining room, the house has fully shifted into its evening state. The transformation is not only in the girl's appearance, but in the atmosphere, quietly electric, poised, expectant. The day is behind them now. The night, with all its unpredictable faces, lies ahead. The dining room is warmer than the rest of the house, a welcome embrace against the winter outside. A clean white cloth covers the table. The cutlery, polished earlier by Betsy, catches the lamplight. Simple china plates sit at each place. It is not opulence, but it is orderly, proper, a small act of ritual that forms the backbone of the house. Mary enters gracefully, her silk gown rustling softly. The other girls are already taking their seats. Emily in pale green, Sarah in deep burgundy, Lily in rich emerald. The colors make the room look like a bouquet of vibrant flowers arranged around the table. And at the head of the table sits the woman who orchestrates all of it. Mrs. Cartwright. She wears a gown of dark purple silk tonight, her hair pulled into a neat chignon, her posture impeccable. She's not a cruel woman, nor is she soft. Her strength is carved into her presence, measured, calm, and unwavering. "Good evening, ladies," she says, her voice carrying the steady authority that governs the entire house. Cook enters carrying a pot of hearty beef stew, followed by Betsy with a basket of warm bread. The aroma fills the room instantly, comforting and rich. After hours of preparation, this meal is more than nourishment. It is grounding, a moment of stillness before the night pulls each woman into different roles and rooms. They eat together, the way families do, though this in truth is more business than kinship. Still, the warmth between the girls is genuine. They laugh quietly at Lily's story about a customer who once fainted from nerves. Emily shares a rumor about a new theater opening in the Strand. Sarah comments on the weather and how it affects business. Insights Madam Cartwright listens too closely. Mary eats slowly, savoring each bite. The stew is thick with vegetables and soft pieces of beef. The bread is still warm, its crust crisp. The wine served tonight is light but pleasant, just enough to warm the chest without muddling the mind. Madam Cartwright places her wineglass down and speaks, her gaze passing over each young woman. We expect a busy evening. Several messages came earlier. Mr. Harrington will arrive at 8. Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Benson shortly after. There may be others. Some gentlemen from the theater district indicated their interest. The room hums softly with understanding. Remember, she continues, reputation is everything. Our clients come because they expect discretion, refinement, and quality. We provide an escape, but a dignified one. She pauses, letting her words settle. No rush, no impropriety, charm, conversation, and comfort. The evening will reward you if you manage it well. The girls nod. They know this. Still, hearing it aloud reinforces the house's meaning and method. Dinner ends with a dessert of warm rice pudding sprinkled with raisins. Betsy clears plates with her careful efficiency. Cook wipes down the sideboard before retreating to her quarters. One by one, the girls set down their wine glasses and adjust their dresses. Mrs. Cartwright rises. I will be in the parlor shortly to receive the she glides from the room, her gown whispering behind her like a curtain closing on the first act of the evening. Mary lingers a moment, letting the warmth of the room sink into her bones. She feels steady, centered, ready. The night ahead may bring pleasant conversation, awkward encounters, demanding clients, or quiet ones. But she has learned to meet each moment with the same calm precision. She stands, smooths her skirt, and touches her hair lightly to ensure every pin is still in place. Then she steps out of the dining room, her movements measured, her mind clear. The evening shift begins. Part 8. The evening begins. The parlor glows with soft light, transformed into a stage for the evening's work. The thick velvet curtains are drawn tight against the cold night outside, and the gas lamps cast a warm golden glow across the red upholstered chairs and polished tables. A fire crackles gently in the grate, its heat pushing back the last remnants of the day's chill. Mary enters quietly, smoothing her blue silk gown. The room looks inviting, intentionally so. It must catch the eye, soothe the nerves, and create the illusion of elegance for men who want to forget, for a short while, the rigid expectations of their respectable lives. Sarah is already seated, her burgundy dress draped gracefully around her as she arranges herself at just the right angle on the sofa. Emily and Lily follow, settling into their places like a trio of painted figures ready to step into motion. A tray of sherry glasses rests on the small bar cabinet in the corner, polished earlier by Mary's own hand. A dish of sugared almonds and small biscuits sits nearby for courtesy and comfort. These details matter. They shape the tone of the room. The hallway clock chimes 8, and almost on cue, the knock comes. A firm, polite tap at the front door. Mary feels the shift in the room. The slight straightening of spines, the subtle change in posture, the quiet intake of breath. The performance has begun. Mrs. Cartwright glides into the parlor doorway. Her composed expression gives nothing away. "Emily," she announces, "Mr. Harrington is here." Emily rises gracefully. Her pale green silk catches the lamplight, shimmering faintly. She offers a polite smile, then follows the madam toward the front hall. The door closes behind them with a soft click. The remaining girls settle into a comfortable silence. Not tense, not weary, just waiting, listening to the quiet waves of the evening as they begin to roll in. Mary sits in one of the armchairs near the fire. The velvet is warm beneath her palms. She takes a slow breath. feeling the heat of the flames seep through her gown, relaxing her muscles without disturbing her posture. The minutes tick by. More footsteps, more muffled voices. Another knock. Mrs. Cartwright appears once again. "Sarah," she says with a small nod. "Mr. Lawrence has arrived." Sarah rises with her usual composed elegance and exits the parlor. This is how the nights unfold. Like a rhythm the house knows by heart. After a few moments, Lily leans closer to Mary, lowering her voice. "Cook said a new gentleman might come tonight. Someone well off. A banker, maybe." Mary nods slightly. "We'll find out soon enough." The speculation is not idle. It is preparation. They adjust themselves mentally depending on the type of visitor. Shy first-timers, seasoned regulars, wealthy patrons with high expectations, lonely men seeking more conversation than contact. Then, another knock. Mrs. Cartwright steps into the parlor, her eyes scanning until they stop on Mary. "Mary," she says calmly, "a gentleman has arrived for you." Mary stands. Her heart doesn't race. She has done this long enough to slip effortlessly into the evening persona, poised, charming, self-contained. As she crosses the room, the blue silk of her gown sways softly with each step. Her chin lifts slightly, her posture lengthens, confidence settling around her like another layer of fabric. She follows Mrs. Cartwright into the hallway. There stands a tall gentleman with neatly combed hair and an air of practiced confidence. His overcoat is finely tailored, his gloves of soft leather. He stands with the comfortable ease of a man accustomed to being respected. "Mr. Hamilton," Mrs. Cartwright introduces with a measured smile. "This is Mary, one of our most accomplished young ladies." Mary curtsies slightly, offering her hand. "A pleasure to meet you, sir." He bows politely and takes her hand briefly. "The pleasure is mine." This first contact tells Mary much. His handshake, firm but not forceful. His gaze, steady, appreciative but not leering. His clothing, neat, expensive, discreet. A banker, perhaps, or a barrister. A man balancing reputation and desire. Mrs. Cartwright guides him toward her office to handle the financial arrangements. She turns to Mary as she exits. "You may wait in the parlor," she says. Mary nods and returns to the firelit room. Lily raises an eyebrow. "Well?" "Respectable," Mary replies. "Quiet, the thoughtful type." Lily grins. "Those are usually generous." Mary says nothing, but she knows Lily is right. A few minutes later, Mrs. Cartwright returns with Mr. Hamilton. "Mary, would you be so kind as to show Mr. Hamilton to the parlor? He would enjoy a glass of sherry before your conversation." Conversation, the coded word, a clue to the evening ahead. Mary gestures gracefully. "Of course. Right this way." She pours 2 glasses of amber sherry, hands one to Mr. Hamilton with a delicate touch, and begins the soft, polished dance of evening conversation. Weather, recent concerts, the pace of the city, all drifting gently around, the real purpose of the visit. Mr. Hamilton listens, responds thoughtfully, and asks questions with genuine interest. He is not merely passing time. He is easing himself into a world where he can put aside the roles he must play outside these walls. The fire crackles, the sherry warms, the atmosphere softens, and Mary, with her calm voice and steady presence, guides the evening forward with practiced grace. The night has begun. Part 9. The Private Hour with Mr. Hamilton. The flames in the parlor fireplace flicker softly, reflecting in Mr. Hamilton's sherry glass as he listens to Mary speak. He seems more relaxed now, his shoulders no longer stiff, his breath less guarded. His earlier polite formality melts slowly into something warmer, more human. This is the first threshold of the evening, the shift from stranger to guest. Mary watches him with the practiced sensitivity of someone who must read people quickly. Every man who enters this house carries a story on his shoulders. Some wrapped in loneliness, others in exhaustion, guilt, excitement, curiosity, or simply the need to feel seen. The successful women in this profession learn to recognize which story belongs to which man. And tonight, Mr. Byster, Hamilton shows signs of someone seeking companionship as much as physical comfort. After finishing their sherry, Mary places her glass gently on the small side table. She folds her hands lightly in her lap and turns her gaze toward him. "Would you care to continue our conversation somewhere more private, Mr. Hamilton?" she asks softly. A hint of a smile touches his lips. "I believe I would." He stands, offering his arm with the kind of courtesy that suggests his upbringing has taught him how to treat women well, even if society denies her the right to be treated as such. Mary touches his arm lightly, and together they move toward the stairs. Each step is measured, balanced. The silk of her gown whispers against the carpet runner. The hallway lamps cast elongated shadows along the walls. They reach her room on the second floor, a space carefully curated for evenings like this. It is not the room she sleeps in, but her professional room. A place meant to appear warm, intimate, welcoming. Inside, a small fire crackles in the hearth. The air smells faintly of lavender water. The bed is neatly arranged with fresh linens. A vase of flowers sits on the dresser. Roses, their petals just beginning to open. Mr. Hamilton pauses briefly at the threshold. "It's charming," he says quietly. Mary closes the door behind them. "Thank you. Please make yourself comfortable." He removes his gloves, places them neatly on the small table, and sits at the edge of the bed. She sits beside him, not too close, not too distant, allowing him to set the pace. At first, their conversation continues gently, flowing from topic to topic like a quiet river. He speaks of a recent concert at the Albert Hall, of business in the city, of the difficulty of maintaining dignity and success in a world that demands both constantly. Mary listens with genuine interest. This is part of the work, yes, but also part of her nature. She has always been a listener, even before she ever stepped into this house. Soon, the conversation shifts naturally into something more personal. "How did you come to be here, Mary?" he asks softly. His tone is curious, but not probing, seeking understanding, not judgment. Mary considers how to answer. Some customers want lies, tragic tales, romantic tales, stories that confirm their fantasies. But Mr. Hamilton seems different, thoughtful, quietly observant. She answers honestly, but simply. "I was a seamstress," she begins. "The work was steady, but the pay was not. I was alone in the city, and winter can be unforgiving." He nods as if this truth aligns with a world he already suspects lies beneath London's polished surface. "Then this," he murmurs. "A rational decision." Mary gives a small smile. Rational, perhaps, but not one society approves of. Mr. Hamilton's brows knit slightly as though turning over a moral equation in his mind. "Society approves of many things that do great harm," he says quietly, "and disapproves of many things done out of necessity." Mary hears sincerity in his voice, a rarity among men in his position. And though she knows better than to mistake this moment for anything other than what it is, a transaction wrapped in gentility, she appreciates the sentiment all the same. From there, the evening transitions gently into touch. Mr. Hamilton's manner is respectful, careful. He's not a man who seeks domination or fantasy. He seeks connection, however temporary and however purchased. The physical act itself is unhurried and considerate. Mary performs her role with professional skill, but also with a calm presence that makes men like Mr. Hamilton feel truly attended to. When it is over, he does not withdraw instantly. Instead, he rests beside her, his arm loosely draped across her waist, his breath steadying. The fire's glow dances across the room. "You're very good at what you do," he says, not with lust, but with quiet appreciation. Mary nods lightly. "Thank you." He hesitates, then asks, "Do you ever think of a different life?" Mary pauses. She has been asked this question before, but rarely by someone who seems to care about the answer. "I think," she says slowly, "that a different life is always imagined easier than it is lived. Every choice has its cost." He studies her face, as though seeing her not only as a woman in this room, but as a person shaped by circumstance. "You're quite extraordinary," he murmurs. Mary offers only a gentle smile. She has learned not to carry such words too deeply. They are meant for the moment, not the future. Eventually, the hallway clock chimes, a soft but clear reminder that the hour he paid for is ending. Mr. Hamilton sighs, sits up, begins to dress. There is no awkwardness in his movements, only the quiet dignity of a man who understands the nature of the world he inhabits. Before leaving, he sets an extra coin on the table. "For the conversation," he says, "and for your grace." Mary inclines her head. "You're welcome to return any time, Mr. Hamilton." He gives a small bow, then leaves the room. Mary stands alone in the quiet, letting the moment settle around her like dust in sunlight. Then she exhales slowly. The hour is over. The night continues. Part 10. Between Encounters. Restoration and Reflection. When the door closes behind Mr. Hamilton, the room feels strangely hollow, not sad, not heavy, simply quieter, as though the air is settling back into its natural shape now that the performance is complete. Mary stands still for a moment, allowing herself a single, long breath. This pause is something she has learned to honor. It is her invisible boundary, an inner line separating one encounter from the next. Without it, the hours would blur into each other, and she would lose the ability to feel present. That small breath is where she becomes herself again. She crosses the room and begins the quiet ritual of restoration. First, she removes the used linens from the bed, folding them neatly into a bundle. There is no disgust or resentment in her movements. This part of the work is simply practical, necessary. A rhythm of cleanliness, a return to order. Fresh linen is taken from the chest. She shakes out the top sheet with a practiced flick, letting it settle over the mattress like a calm exhale. She smooths the corners, presses down the wrinkles, ensuring it lies perfectly taut. The pillowcase follows, the crisp cotton catching the firelight as she slips it on. Next, she goes to the washstand. The water in the basin is cool, but she has grown accustomed to the sensation. She dips a cloth in, wrings it out, and cleans herself with efficient motions. The water carries away the last traces of Mr. Hamilton. His scent, his touch, the heat of his presence. She feels her body reset, returning wholly to her own skin. She empties the used water into the slop bucket beneath the stand and refills the basin. The clean cloth is folded neatly at the edge. Mary moves to the mirror above the dresser. Her reflection greets her with surprising steadiness. Her hair has loosened a little, easily fixed. Her cheeks still hold a natural flush from the exertion, and her gown, though slightly rumpled, can be smoothed back into shape. She lifts her hands and gently repins a curl, adjusts the bodice, straightens the silk at her hips. A few small movements restore the polished image expected of her. As she works, her mind drifts, not far, just into the deeper waters beneath the surface of her thoughts. Mr. Hamilton had been different. Not because he treated her kindly, several men did. Not because he was respectful, many were. But because he acknowledged her thinking, her choices, her intelligence. Most customers avoided such subjects, preferring to keep their illusions intact. But Mary knows better than to romanticize the anomaly. He paid for her time. He will return if it suits him. His interest, however genuine it felt in the moment, exists within the walls of this house and the boundaries of the hour. Still, it was pleasant to speak as a thinking person, not merely a performer. She closes her eyes for a moment and breathes deeply. Slow in, slow out. The fire crackles softly behind her. This is her moment of reclamation, the one she gives herself between every client. It protects her from the subtle erosion of self that this work can bring. When she opens her eyes again, the mirror reflects someone calm, collected, ready. She picks up the bundle of soiled linens and steps into the hallway. The corridor is warm from the fireplaces burning throughout the house. She walks down the back stairs into the scullery, where the housemaid will gather the laundry for washing tomorrow. As Mary places the bundle onto the growing pile, she hears soft murmurs from the kitchen, the comforting chatter of the girls who are between clients, the clinking of teacups, the scratch of a chair moving on the stone floor. She returns upstairs, her footsteps unhurried. The night has deepened, the lamps glowing brighter, shadows dancing along the walls. When she enters the parlor again, Lily looks up with a mischievous smile. "Well?" she whispers. The banker, was he as civilized as he looked? Mary sits beside her, smoothing her skirt before replying with a small smile. A thoughtful man. Polite. More conversation than anything else. Lily nudges her lightly. "Ah, the talkers. They're the easiest." Mary's smile grows faint but warm. "Sometimes," she agrees. Emily joins them a moment later, her cheeks flushed from exertion, her gown slightly rumpled. She collapses gracefully into one of the chairs. "Old Mr. Watson again," Emily groans. "The peppermint drops nearly choked me this time." The three of them laugh quietly. Soft, genuine laughter that feels like a warm blanket around the shoulders. These moments, simple, ordinary, unscripted, are what sustain the girls. They are not heroines, not tragic figures, not decorative ornaments. They are young women trying to survive in a world that gives them few choices and even fewer protections. They lean on each other because they must. The fire crackles gently. Outside, the rain taps softly at the window. The house feels alive, breathing in its own steady rhythm. Mary takes a cup of tea from the tray Lily offers. She holds it between her hands, letting the heat seep into her fingers. The warmth spreads through her chest, steadying her before the next call. She knows more customers will come, some pleasant, some forgettable, some tiresome. But this pause, this quiet interlude of camaraderie, is enough to carry her forward. When the knock sounds again at the front door, Mary straightens slightly but does not tense. Her breathing remains slow. Her posture remains elegant. She is ready. Conclusion. The quiet truth of a forgotten life. Night settles over the house like a heavy velvet curtain. The city outside fades into the soft percussion of rain and the occasional rumble of distant carriage wheels. Inside, the rooms grow still one by one. Lamps turn down, fires collapsing into red embers, voices retreating into whispers, and finally into silence. Mary returns to her real bedroom at last, the small shared space where there is no performance, no silk, no curated charm. She unpins her hair, brushes out the last tensions of the evening, and crawls beneath the familiar weight of her wool blanket. Lily, drifting in and out of sleep, murmurs a faint good night. Mary responds softly. The storm outside intensifies, tapping against the window in a steady rhythm that feels older than the city itself. A rhythm of nature, uncaring yet strangely soothing. Mary's breathing slows. Her body sinks into the thin mattress. The exhaustion of the day melts into the embrace of sleep. And here, this is where the story does not end, but rather folds quietly into the countless untold stories just like it. Mary is not unique. She is one of thousands. one of the many women history pushed into dim corners and labeled with harsh names, while ignoring the world that shaped their choices. She lived in a society that demanded moral perfection from women while offering them almost nothing in return. Not security, not fair wages, not genuine opportunity. And yet Mary lived with dignity. She found community in the girls around her, routine in the morning chores, stability in the madame's strict but protective management, brief moments of joy in simple things, warm bread, a new hairpin, a conversation that acknowledged her intelligence. She existed inside a life that many judged from outside, but very few ever tried to understand. Her story, like so many others, is not simply about survival within the sex trade. It is a reminder of the narrow paths available to working-class women in Victorian London. It shows the cost of poverty, the weight of societal hypocrisy, and the resilience required to build a meaningful life in the margins. History often records the deeds of wealthy men and the reforms of powerful institutions. But equally important, perhaps more so, are the quiet stories of ordinary women whose lives formed the true backbone of the era. Women who washed, stitched, soothed, endured, and persevered in a world that rarely softened itself for them. Mary's life is not a footnote. It is a testament. A testament to adaptation, to strength born from necessity, to the capacity for grace in difficult circumstances. And as she drifts finally into sleep, wrapped in the modest comforts of a room that belongs only to her and Lily, the larger city continues on. London breathes, the fog thickens, the brothel settles into silence. Another day will come, with the same routines, the same clients, the same delicate balance between hardship and humanity. But for now, Mary rests. And in that rest, we glimpse something simple and profound, the universal human desire to find peace, even in the most complicated of lives. The story closes not with tragedy nor triumph, but with truth. A truth that countless women carried quietly through the centuries, and that we, at last, take a moment to remember.